Anthony Scaramucci, welcome to Solana Floor.
All right.
It is an absolute pleasure to be with you. How are you today, sir? What's your first question? How are we doing?
How are you doing? You are excelling. This is Solana bullish. Yeah, we should change the name from
You
breakpoint.
saw the ball when you walked in, didn't you?
Yeah, we should change the breakpoint to Solana bullish.
Well, you are.
When I walk in here, I can't think of anything other than how happy I am to be a Solana investor and a stakeholder.
You are one of the most outspoken Solana bulls out there. We're going to dive straight into one of your ideas. Let's say I want to say it was about 6 months ago on a podcast. You suggested that over a 5 to 10 year period, we might see a $2,500 Solana. I'm curious, given the recent price action, if that thesis holds. If not, why?
Well, listen, I mean, it's not going to come without, levels of volatility. You have to remember the regulatory story in the United States was a little uneven this year. If you had asked me at the beginning of the year, would we have gotten the stablecoin legislation passed and the market structure or the clarity bill passed, I would have said 100% we're going to get both those things passed. That did not happen.
Right.
And so those speed bumps plus the inflationary situation in the U.S. has probably slowed down our trajectory. But I think the timing is still right. It's just going to continue to have some volatility. But remember, I've been a technology investor. This is my 37th year on Wall Street. Been a technology investor for almost 4 decades. And you've got to stay in tech, even in its lowest or its most uncertain moments. And I'll take you guys back to before you were born, probably. I watched something like Amazon drop 90%, and people write off Jeff Bezos. And now it's 55, 60% of the internet and retail sales globally. So you got to stay in things. Great technology, great things like Solana are durable. The regulation is catching up, and when it does, I think those things will all happen.
So 4 decades in technology investing, you've obviously seen the ups, the downs, the craziest things, but let's think about the last 24 months. We've obviously been in an overall upwards trajectory. What's the craziest thing you've seen happen this cycle that you've gone, this is absolutely nuts?
Well, I mean, the Trump meme coin, I think, was the craziest thing that I've seen. And the Melania meme coin, that we're just being brutally honest, was on Solana, which I guess is a compliment to Solana because it was chosen because of Solana's ability to handle large scale, large volume transactions with great certainty and finality. But I think those coins, if we're being brutally honest with our viewers and listeners, I think those coins slowed down the regulatory process in the U.S. I think when the President of the United States is inserting himself into the meme coin business a couple of hours before he's getting inaugurated, I think if you're in opposition to him politically, you could want to choose a different direction and use that as a foil. And that happened this year. I think that really did impair our ability to get the market structure piece of with
Is it really reputational damage then from your vantage point? When Trump launches a meme coin and Melania launches a meme coin, and there's clearly sniping and insider trading going on.
I think it's short-term regulatory damage. I think we would have gotten everything that we wanted this year had the president sort of stayed out of the meme coin business.
So I promised Finn that I wasn't gonna get caught on politics. I'm a big fan of your podcast, The Rest of Politics US.
I'm not trying to get caught on politics, but you're asking me a specific question. What was the most surprising thing to me?
So I have to...
Trump shouldn't surprise any of us with some of the things that he does, but that did catch me off guard, right? It caused a surge in Solana because of the throughput, but then it also sucked out all the liquidity from a lot of the altcoins, which I think hurt the industry.
I want to focus on that for a second. Given that this has happened, given that we've had this reputational damage, when you're speaking in financial boardrooms and in institutional boardrooms, how do you separate what's happening there with the Trump and Melania meme coins from all the great scaling that's growing on Solana on its institutional?
I mean, we'll go back to Trump for a second. So there's good Trump and there's bad Trump. Okay, so good Trump is Paul Atkins. Good Trump is the CFTC. Good Trump is we're finally getting out of the nonsense of blocking the technology because we've got a bunch of Luddites and older people that don't understand the technology. And so you got to give the president credit for that. You got to give the president for putting somebody like Paul Atkins, who's been a personal friend of mine for, I don't know, at least 10 years, came to the Wyoming Blockchain Symposium that we host out of Wyoming last year and said something that was so material but I think it bears worth repeating. I'm surprised people are not paying close enough attention. He's saying, in answer to your question, in 5 years, all of our assets are going to be tokenized. And what's going to be the number one rail system to tokenize on? It's going to be Solana. And I explained that in the new book that I wrote, Solana Rising. So to your point, it's reputationally damaging in the short term, but this technology is better than anything else that we have out there. And you mentioned, and I repeated, I've been in the business for 37 years. If you have something that works better than something else, it gets adopted. Whatever you had gets replaced and gets adopted. I'm old enough to remember, maybe you guys are not, we didn't have Wi-Fi. We had dial-up modems that were whirring and burring. It took 3
remember the noise.
I remember the noise. Yeah, we grew up with the noise.
Okay, it took 3.5 minutes to get the AOL landing page to land. Now we have billions of people streaming 4K video on the web. And so don't underestimate how early we are. Don't underestimate how much innovation is ahead. And just think about what's gone on with Solana over the last, 5 years. The launch, March 2020 to today. And I don't want to jinx us, but I think we've gone 2 years now without any doubt.
We have. I want to go back to something you said, Solana Rising. I have a copy of it. A colleague of ours was kind enough to send it to me. I'm going to ask you a bit of a salty question. I don't mean to be capricious here, but you wrote a book about Solana. We love it.
Yeah.
But you tokenized a $300 million fund on a different chain. Why? Why not Solana?
So it's a good question. That's a very small fund. I have another larger fund that will likely get tokenized on Solana. I am a multi-chain person. I don't believe in chain monogamy. Maybe you do.
We're not maximalists.
So my attitude is there's going to be 3 or 4 chains that win. I believe Solana will be one of them. I believe Avalanche will be one of them. I think one of the things that goes on in Avalanche are these L1s that you can customize on.
Yep.
Some CTOs, because of their worry about regulatory compliance, will use the Avalanche on some of these smaller funds. Solana is, to me, stocks and bonds are going to be tokenized on it. The larger funds are going to be tokenized on it. And so it's not a salty question at all. But I will say this, my largest personal position, even greater than Bitcoin, is my position in Solana. And I have it all staked. And so, yes, I do own Avalanche. I do own Bitcoin. I have a small position in Ethereum, but a very small position.
I think most people in this room are in that same category.
Yeah. And so I'm not as Kyle Samani from Multicoin likes to make fun of me. Well, you talk positive about this, talk positive about that. I said the name of your fund is Multicoin. All right. Well,
Absolutely.
I'm not a maximalist, but I'm as close to a maximalist as I can be.
For the record, we do love Avalanche. I think the inning to sit at.
But also have to remember something. I have so much Solana that I thought it was important for me to write a book about Solana so I could explain to my clients. Remember, guys, you guys are younger than most of my clients. Okay, I got old fuddy-duddy clients that don't understand this stuff and they get mad at me for buying it.
So
I need to explain it to them.
I want to ask about the book. Obviously, part of what you've been doing for a long, long time is explaining to some of these older gentlemen the value of the technology.
And gentlewomen.
And gentlewomen, your fuddy-duddy clients. You wrote a book about it. You wrote a book about Solana. When you explain Solana to them, do they approach it with, blind optimism now that you've written a book about it, or are they still cautious? Do you have to sort of break through some of those scenarios?
Older people are skeptical.
Right.
Okay, older people, when something has worked for you and you're used to it, you don't like change. The irony of life, if you're a great stoic, you recognize that every day you're changing. The 5-year-old version of you is long gone. And soon the 25-year-old version of you will be long gone. And this is what happens in life.
I wish I was.
And yet what we try to do is trying to help you out here. But what we try to do is we try to fix to a position.
Yep.
And I think it's very, very important for all of us to have some neuroplasticity and to allow our brains to learn about other things. And so you guys know this, the preponderance of the money is held by the people that are north of 60. And I can give you evidence of that this year. There's a fear of currency debasement globally. Gold moved larger than any of the cryptocurrencies this year. Why is that? Well, the people that have the money, the older people, have bought into and understand the 5,000-year notion that gold is a store of value.
This is something I wanted to ask you about.
Do you see what I mean?
100%.
So we have to educate those people, but I'll predict we won't get most of those people. But what will happen is the people that are 25 today, 20 years from now, will be 45. They'll be in positions of power and asset management. They'll be positions of being CTOs in the Fortune 100. And they're going to be like, hey, I want my stock tokenized on Solana. I want to use a stable coin. I want to have a stable coin maybe as part of my loyalty program. If I'm a big company, I'm going to tokenize that on Solana. And I'm going to own a lot of Solana because it's going to be part of the operating software that we're going to use in the future. But you're not going to win everybody. But I would rather own Solana today so that when I'm sitting in this booth with you, and it's hot in here, by the way.
It is hot.
Yeah. I'm sitting in this hot booth with you, and it's 2030. You're like, all right, these guys had the vision. You know, I bought Bitcoin late for me. I was introduced to it early. I missed it, didn't understand it.
You also have a book on Bitcoin.
I do. I wrote a little book of Bitcoin. Saylor wrote the foreword. Bobby Kennedy endorsed the back of the book. I want to explain this stuff to people. When I got into Bitcoin in 2020, I felt like it was late. I bought it. My average cost about $17,000. We're 4.7 to 1 in 5 years. That is a phenomenal return for a traditional finance person. And yet, if you step back, there are periods of time where I look like a genius. There are periods of time that I look like an idiot. Periods of time I look like a genius.
Story of crypto.
Yeah. You know, and so to me, but if you zoom out, think about it. If we're sitting here 5 years from now, Solana is 600, and I believe it will be possibly even more than that. The point will be, we got there early. We took the hits. We rode the volatility. And we sat in rooms like this and we listened to people talk about how they're going to use and deploy Solana for the future of finance. And it's a very exciting thing to be a part of.
Absolutely.
Even if there's going to be lots of volatility.
So I want to ask you about the TradFi element and the perspectives towards crypto and how that's changing, given that we are in a Solana conference now and people tend to be more largely retail focused, let's say, or at least they have been for the last few years. But very quickly, talk about valuations, talk about gold. Gold has performed incredibly over the last 12 months. Bitcoin now against gold is at its cheapest that it's been since 2017.
Yeah.
So I'm curious if when you talk to some of these more traditional, more sophisticated investors, that particular valuation, that pair, is something that excites them about crypto. And will we see sort of a catch-up trade in crypto?
You have to tell me. So I think there's but-fors, right? So you have to tell me about the regulation. Okay, so if you say to me, it's at a low price, but for the regulation. See what I mean? If you're telling me that we're going to pass this market structure clarity stuff in the United States next year, which I predict we will, I think you're going to see rising prices. If you're telling me that we're going to break the back of inflation in the U.S. and the Fed's going to be able to lower rates a little bit more aggressively with a new Federal Reserve chairman, I'll tell you, well, that's going to provide a lot more liquidity for crypto, which will create that positive flywheel that we like, and that gap will start to close. But I think it would be a misnomer to suggest, because you may see it that way, and I may see it that way, the three of us may see Bitcoin as a store of value. I think the outsiders don't see it that way. They see it as a volatile technology asset that's risk on, risk off, and there's some risk off things going on sentiment-wise. It's caused some deleveraging in the system, and it's caused some people to pull back. So remember, but this would be apropos. A good analogy would be Amazon. Amazon had 8-10 drops of 50% or more, one big drop of 90%. And then as it scaled and as people adopted it, it started to look like the volatility of the overall S&P. It's one of the largest holdings now out there. So I think if you think about it from that perspective, there's a cycle to these things, and there's an adoption curve to these things. And so you need that perspective, and you need that patience, basically. And so the institutions are not quite there, but something big happened this year, is in the United States, you were able to get a staking Solana ETF.
And boy, do we love staking Solana ETFs.
Come on, that is a huge thing. And so now, as people go up the curve, and maybe we can get some of these institutions or some of these fuddy-duddies to read Solana Rising, and maybe they'll buy that staking ETF.
I think they absolutely should. Guess who we're talking to later? The chief investment officer of Bitwise,
Yeah.
They issued obviously VSOL, the most successful Solana ETF of the year. I think it's the most successful ETF of the year.
Listen, it's a great product, and the tokenomics around Solana are incredible when people really study it. Obviously, I've got all my Solana staked in a long-term account, long-term wallet.
I want to ask you about TradFi. I know you want to hop in there, Finn. So TradFi is here. We have $1 trillion asset managers here in the Etihad Arena at Solana Breakpoint. I think for the first time ever, hanging out with these degens, you know, people that, you know, don't not only not stake their Solana, but they're gambling at a majority of the time, right? I think this is a fascinating combination of people all in the same room. Do you get the impression that crypto natives are sort of selling their soul to the notion that we want our banks to be funded? It's one of those discussions.
I understand the libertarian notion and the degen notion, and it's sort of funny for me to watch this, because usually if you think about traditional finance, it goes from the institution, could be the venture capitalist, it goes from the institution into the Goldman Sachs's or the banks to get repurposed as an IPO, and then it goes out to the investor and the publicly traded institutional investor, right? And this has been totally different. It's been the opposite. The retail investors are the ones that gravitated to this. I say that basically happened due to the regulation. The U.S. was not ready to regulate this thing fairly. The U.S. Took a jaundiced eye towards crypto in general, not Solana specifically, but crypto in general. And so that also increased the intensity of the libertarians to be involved with it. You know, it's like, you know, I've got kids. If I tell my kids not to do something, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to do it. They're going to do it. So all you degens jumped in there. But then all of a sudden, lo and behold, the technology and the promise of the technology is overwhelming. So it catches the attention of somebody like me. I'm going to be 62 years old in January. My first Solana investment was in 2021. So I'm a 4-year owner of Solana. So I bought my first Solana token at age 58. I just want you to think about that for a second. I'm an older guy in the industry. I'm a traditional finance person. So you degens won me over. And now it's my job as a traditional finance person to explain the proposition to other traditional finance people. Okay, and that's what I'm trying to do with Solana Rising.
So far, the reactions to the book, have they been as positive?
It's been favorable. I mean, listen, I mean, you know, I like to teach people. I wrote a best-selling book, and if you don't believe me, come into my basement. I'll show you everything. But in truth, you know, it's number one on Amazon right now in terms of new releases in the investment management space. So I'm gratified by that. People really want to learn about the token.
What are some of the key lessons that you know, older investors, more traditional investors can take from that book that they can't really get from even attending Solana Breakpoints?
I think there's 3 simple things. This technology works. It will delayer the financial system. It'll make things cheaper for us to do. We're going to save trillions of dollars, which we can put back into the economy in terms of economic innovation. We saw that with the internet. We're going to see that with this type of technology. It's safe. Ensure people that you can have a permissionless trade back and forth with each other. That's incredibly reliable. It has speeds. You know, I interviewed Anatoly at Abu Dhabi Finance Week yesterday. I said, what is this? Is it iOS? Is it NASDAQ? Is it New York Stock Exchange? He said, no, it's sort of Linux. It's an open sourced system to allow for permissionless transactions at a super fast speed, faster than Visa. And so to me, that's going to win. And I think I want people to know that. And listen, the technology is ahead of the regulation, but we're going to catch up next year.
I want to play devil's advocate on that very briefly. You mentioned Share-Pool Atkins is one of the best things to happen for the regulation side. If we talk about Project Crypto, we talk about tokenization.
How come all the people in the Solana magazine look like the new mayor from New York?
Mayor Mondani.
Mondani is a big Solana holder?
Is he?
Oh, no, I don't know.
I'm just going to talk about.
He wouldn't.
I'm making a joke. Okay, go ahead.
Isn't that brilliant?
So we talk about Project Crypto. We talk about all might will be on chain in 2 to 5 years. Why would that be on Solana as opposed to the government running their own proprietary closed source system, which they could have full control over? Why should we go public with this as opposed to keeping it siloed within a contained little gun?
Well, first of all, the government hasn't done that in the United States. Maybe the other governments will try to do that. Maybe China will. I don't know. the government has been reluctant to have its own USDC, dollar-denominated stable coin. I think there's privacy issues related to all of that. I'm a big believer in capitalism and U.S. capitalism, and the private sector does a very good job of handling and solving problems. I think it would be a bad decision for the government to go in that direction. There's no evidence, unless you can point to something that I haven't seen, there's no evidence that would suggest the government wants to go in that direction. I think the real question is, though, how much of the market share will Solana take relative to other tokens or layer ones? And I would say to you, I don't know the answer to that, but I think there could be a lot of winners. I see this a lot like the cloud. And so, guys, I'm old enough to remember somebody knocked on the door at Skybridge and said, we want to put your data up on the cloud. I was like, no way. I mean, that's ridiculous.
They came to your door. They didn't even send you an email.
And they said, no, we want you to do that. They explained to me why. I said, no way. Then it turned out it was cheaper to store the data. It was more anonymous. It was actually more secure. And guess what happened? We had this exponential leap in people using the cloud, but there's not one cloud vendor. There's AWS, there's Oracle, there's Microsoft. And so I see this a lot like that. People will be on Solana. Some people will be on Ethereum. Others may choose Avalanche. I don't think there's necessarily going to be one winner, nor does there need to be one winner.
So it's a positive sum game.
32 positive sum game. Yeah, and in fact, I would say that the better Avalanche does is better for Solana, and the better Solana does, the better for Avalanche and the other chains.
Raise your ceiling for everything.
Yes, you're still in an area where the rising tide of the entire industry, it's in the mutuality of interest for everybody in the industry to help that happen. And that's why I do these conferences. And that's why I bring, they're multi-chain conferences, and they're also multi-brokerage conferences. It's not just Kraken or Coinbase, it's Kraken, Coinbase, Binance, whoever wants to be.
So the conference circuit in Abu Dhabi this week, and the capital of capital, has been pretty wild. We had Bitcoin Meta, we had Abu Dhabi Finance Week, you mentioned. I was there a couple of days ago. I found it fascinating to see the amount of institutional capital in the trillions, rubbing shoulders with as much crypto representation as there was there. We had Solana, we had Coinbase, we had Binance, we had KuCoin, a bunch of these large exchanges, and people like yourself who are obviously crypto evangelists to a certain extent as well. Is this a relatively recent development that you're noticing in the last 24 months? Yeah. How impressive is that change?
Well, it's impressive, but it's also, you've gotten regulatory clearance. Pittsburgh National Bank, PNC, has just told its customers you can buy Bitcoin, we'll hold it in custody. First large money center bank to allow for that in the United States. You guys realize how massive that is?
That's huge.
Okay, I mean, it's as massive as the ETF for BlackRock or Fidelity's ETF.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're getting the green light. How many doors I knocked on in 2020, 2021, 2022, and the people said to me, look, I'm really sorry. I can't go in that direction because we don't have regulatory clarity.
Yeah.
And now you're telling me we're going to have regulatory clarity? You have an SEC chairman. I want to repeat this, guys. You had an SEC chairman last week say 5 years from now, everything's going to be tokenized.
That's huge. Unthinkable compared to 5 years ago.
Come
on the
Think about it.
Yeah. Very, very
impressive. He was the worst, by the way. I mean, he was the worst SEC chairman in our history. Just the bizarrest behavior. Lost so many court cases. Literally embarrassed himself as the SEC chairman.
Yeah. You'll have to excuse me for going back to Trump here for a second, but obviously miracles do happen in terms of people changing their minds, maybe with the exception of Gary Gensler. He was, for a long time, President Trump, a crypto skeptic, crypto critical. He called it a scam, said it was money laundering, all kinds of stuff. Now he's a self-fashioned crypto president, for better or worse. So, obviously miracles do happen. I'm curious, first of all, did you see
my favorite color orange is Bitcoin orange, not Trump orange, though. I just want to state that for the record. Did I see that coming?
Did you see that coming?
So listen, here again, you can like or dislike Donald Trump, but let me stipulate the following, because I've known him for a long period of time. Obviously, I worked for him. I was on the campaign with him in 2016, know him a long period of time. Like or dislike him, he's got unbelievable political instincts. So here's the pitch. Mr. Trump, how are you? I'm great. You hate Bitcoin and crypto. Yeah, I hate Bitcoin and crypto. But do you really understand it? No, I really don't. Okay, we want to spend 15, 20 minutes with you. Want to get you up to speed on it. Oh, by the way, you're a great contrarian. Yes, I am. Are you an entrepreneur? Yes, I am. Oh, well, it turns out that the Democrats and the corporatists hate it. Tell me more. And it turns out that we're super upset about that. We're going to plow $300 million into this presidential, congressional, and Senate elections, and we would like your help. And Trump said, sign me up. And when am I speaking at the Bitcoin conference? Yep. Okay. And so, you know, as I've talked to you guys may know this, I'm close to Eric Trump, even though I am in opposition with the president politically. Eric and I are close. We worked on American Bitcoin together. And I would say to you that you don't need Donald Trump to understand every nuance of the blockchain, but you have to admire and appreciate his political instincts and understanding that this is the future of finance, and him putting the right team in place to embrace that. And so he deserves all the credit in the world for that. I'm a person that likes to tell it straight. And even though I may be in political opposition with his behavior, I certainly don't like what's going on in the Ukraine. I can articulate all that to you guys, but this is a crypto podcast. I do like the fact that he's embraced this, and it's a sign of his political instincts, and it's had a great benefit to us in this industry.
And has that shift in his opinion?
Even though he put the meme coin out there because that's what he does.
Which was not great.
Net positive, he's been a net positive to him.
So in your capacity as, founder of Skybridge, when you talk to potential investors about crypto, the fact that Donald Trump had that shift in position and thought, you know what, I can actually make a bunch of money out of this, and maybe I don't need to be competitive, and maybe I can understand it and delegate some of my power to my sons to go out and create all these businesses. Has that shift in perspective influenced other traditional investors?
I think it has positively. Yeah, I think it has. I think if you talk to compliance people at a local bank, money center bank, they're like, yeah, liked it, understood it, but really can't do anything until the government clears it. We're very highly regulated institutions. And I think that the fact that you're now getting that green light from the government has positively influenced people.
What's one thing that we're still missing, though?
Well, I mean, it's the obvious thing. We don't have the market structure bill in place. We need that. We also need, this was sort of ridiculous, but a sign of how Washington's dysfunctionality comes into play. We needed to allow the stable coins to have yield on them. You know, the American Banking Association came in there and blocked that because they didn't want the competition. Well, I'd like to see that, and I'd like to see the Market Structure Act in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Market Structure Bill in place.
I know a lot of people are chasing that as well. If you think about Solana in 2024 and 2025, massive success story. First of all, with retail adoption, now with institutional adoption. What is the story of 2026 going to be?
Okay, well, again, I'm going to make the assumption that we get the Clarity Act passed, and I think the story is going to be tokenization.
Tokenization of
actual
money market funds,
stocks and bonds.
Tokenized equities, do you see a lot of growth there?
I do see that.
Yeah.
More and more.
Exciting. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. Anthony Scaramucci, thank you so much for joining us.
To be on with both of you.
Really appreciate
to put my head on a swivel. I try to hopefully answer both.
Listen, next time you're in this hot box with us, hopefully it's not going to be 2.5 kilometers. It's going to be 5.5 kilometers. But really appreciate your time, Anthony Scaramucci. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be on with you guys.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you for helping me at the book.